Good morning, it's Friday, the 8th of May. This is Europe Today, and I'm Maret Gwyn, coming to you live from Brussels with the news and analysis to start your day. Coming up today, in a call with the European Commission chief overnight, US President Donald Trump threatened much higher tariffs on the EU unless the bloc slashes tariffs on US goods to 0% by the 4th of July. The pressure is on for the EU to push its embattled trade deal with the US over the line. We'll have the details. And the US says it has struck Iranian military sites following an exchange of fire in the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran says civilian areas have been hit. But President Trump claims the ceasefire is still in effect. Meanwhile, Israeli and Lebanese officials are set to hold further talks next week as the ceasefire in Lebanon falters. In other news, Ukraine's top negotiator Rustem Umerov is in Miami to meet with Trump's envoys after weeks of stalled progress in US-brokered peace talks. It comes as Moscow's unilaterally announced ceasefire is supposed to take effect and after Russia broke the longer truce proposed by Ukraine. President Zelensky has warned other states not to send their representatives to the parade in Moscow on Saturday. But first this morning to our top story. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen and President Trump held a call last night amid rising transatlantic trade tensions. Trump has issued an ultimatum, adding pressure on EU negotiators to push the trade deal with the US over the line. For more, I'm joined by our correspondent, Stefan Grober. Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Marit.
So Trump is clearly not happy with the Europeans. What's at stake here?
Yeah, he's losing patience on this one. It was somewhat in the air after we've heard similar statements from members of his administration in the days before. Now, here's what he said verbatim in his social media post. I've been waiting patiently for the EU to fulfill their side of the historic trade deal we agreed in Turnberry, Scotland, the largest trade deal ever. I agreed to give until our country's 250th birthday, or unfortunately, their tariffs would immediately jump to much higher levels. Of course, the deal is lopsided and controversial, especially in the European Parliament. It's 0 tariffs on US exports going to Europe and 15% on European products going to America. That's why negotiations between the EU institutions have been tough so far and are still ongoing before the deal can be approved by the Parliament. The main sticking point here being the demand to insert safeguards in case Trump breaches the joint commitments or threatens the bloc's territorial integrity, as he did when he threatened to forcefully seize Greenland from Denmark. The problem, of course, is, Maeve, that no one in Europe believes that this is a good deal for us.
But still a looming threat of 25% tariffs on EU cars, that could be a big blow, especially to the German car industry.
Well, it would be a pretty nasty blow. That's correct. It would probably not destroy the European car industry, but it could accelerate a major shift towards a relocation of industrial capacity away from Europe. Now, not all German car makers would be equally exposed. BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen, they all run major plants in the US, and Trump himself has said that vehicles made in US factories would avoid tariffs. But Audi and Porsche would be very vulnerable. They could lose market share, their profit margins would shrink, and they could be forced to relocate their production to America. And this is exactly what Trump wants. That could lead, of course, to further weakening Germany's car industry and Germany's industrial base, and also put pressure on its suppliers in Eastern Europe. And then the question is, what would the EU do? Would it retaliate, and how? So the prospect of a major trade war with the US is certainly on the horizon here.
Okay, right. Stefan, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on that. Now we're moving on. The EU's defence chief, Commissioners Kubilius, will visit Poland and his native Lithuania today to sign defence loan deals, collectively to the tune of 50 billion euros. The aim is to strengthen these nations' defences, and the loans are part of the EU's 150 billion euro defence programme known as SAFE. Poland will be the biggest beneficiary of the programme. Our EU correspondent, Angela Skujins, is here and spoke to Commissioner Kubilius just before he set off. Angela, good morning, good to see you. Tell us first, what will this money, when will it flow and what will it be spent on?
Good morning, Marid. So the less juicy details first. 15% of the cash is expected to be dispersed by the end of the month to both Poland and Lithuania. The rest of the money should flow every 6 months, dependent on whether these countries adhere to the European Commission's rules. Now, this is, of course, part of the EU's big pitch to ensure the continent is fighting fit and can repel any foreign aggression, namely Russia. Poland is expected to receive the biggest envelope of cash. We're talking about 43 billion euros. They want to beef up their anti-drone defence systems as well as that eastern flank. So that's the land border between Poland and Belarus. Lithuania is expected to receive a smaller parcel of money, 6 billion euros, but they really want to amp up their land forces and buy ammunition as well as mines. 18 member states applied for this loan program, including Hungary. We know that the incoming Prime Minister, Peter Magyar, wants to put this on the back burner. However, I did manage to speak to the European Commissioner for Defence, Commissioners Kubilius, before he took off to Poland and Lithuania today. I asked him about the significance of inking these deals.
And it's very symbolic that we are doing that in Poland, because Poland is the country which is taking the biggest responsibility on the biggest amount of those loans, 42.7, if I am correct, billion euros. It's also very symbolic that we're doing that on Victory Day, showing really that we're ready, to deter and to defend ourselves. And it's again very symbolic that we're doing that in, just before Europe's Day, because this mechanism of safe loans is really based on basic principles of European Union, on solidarity principles.
What is Europe protecting itself from? What is the money going to be used for?
Well, definitely, in Europe we see very clearly that possibility of Russian aggression against EU or NATO member states is real. That is what our intelligence services are speaking. Poland is doing a very big job in strengthening both its own defense capabilities, but also strengthening defense of the whole Europe, because those frontier countries like Poland, their border is also European Union border. So, and what is also very important that with that loan, Poland is strengthening its defense industry. And this is our common goal in the whole Europe, really, to make our defense industries ready to produce what is needed in order to deter possibility of Russian aggression.
And we know that the Hungarian Prime Minister-to-be, Peter Magyar, is currently reassessing that country's defence loan application. How hopeful are you that this proposal will get over the line?
Well, that is what we agreed with new government or forthcoming government of Hungary. That is a normal practice, that such a big, responsibility, such a big obligation from the government side should be taken when the new government is established. And definitely they need to have some time to review the projects which were proposed by the previous government, by Viktor Orban government, and that's it's nothing unusual here. So definitely time is very important because we want that all the member states would be able to fully implement those loans till 2030, to have all the products produced. We know that our industries are ramping up their production, but still, we see the issue, and some governments are worried about that industries are not fast enough, to increase their production. So things are, demand very, very rapid actions. I'm very, very happy that we managed to achieve such an outcome, agreements on all the package of the loans during less than a year time. So, and we hope that Hungary very soon also will join those who will use those loans for strengthening their defense.
And last question, are you confident that Europe's defence industries will move fast enough to meet the demands of the EU member states when it comes to producing those weapons that they're ordering?
Well, that is our permanent, topic for discussions with the industries. I was, going through so-called missile tours through all the different producers of missiles, and we started again symbolically from Poland. And everywhere we were speaking about what still is needed to be done in order for our industries to ramp up, to produce more fast, to shift maybe from what industries are calling themselves haute couture production, very expensive, very technological advanced, but very expensive and slow to be produced, to more of good enough production. And we need to see very clearly what is our strategic challenge. Still, Russia is outproducing us, and quite heavily. So that is what worries us.
That was the EU's Defence Commissioner, Andrius Kubilius, speaking to our correspondent, Angela Skujins. We're moving to the Middle East next. Direct talks between Israel and Lebanon are set to resume next week, but Israel and Hezbollah continue to exchange fire, with at least 380 people killed since the fragile ceasefire took effect in April. This week, Israel also struck Lebanon's capital of Beirut for the first time since the start of that ceasefire. We're now joined live by Nadim Gemayel, a Lebanese parliamentarian for the Kataeb Party. Good morning, sir. Good to have you with us. Can I start by asking you, is it fair to say now that the ceasefire has completely collapsed? And what does that mean for these talks between Lebanon and Israel?
So let's start by saying that there was no real ceasefire during this last 2 weeks, because effectively small butter and skirmish were continuing between Israel and Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon. And of course, what happened yesterday in Dahye was like a proof that this ceasefire is very, very, very shallow. Now, just to put things into perspective, we need to ensure that there is no, we are not in a war between Lebanon and Israel. The real problem is between Hezbollah and Israel, between Iran and the West, including the United States and Israel, and we are paying the price as Lebanese people.
Indeed. I will ask you about Hezbollah in just a moment, but I want to ask you about the Israeli side first, because we know the situation in the south, demolitions, shellings continue. Is that acceptable?
This is, of course, not acceptable, but this is at the same time, we need to find a final solution, and this final solution resides on the fact that we had in our south militias and military organizations that are outside the state, that are outside the organization of the state, and who took Lebanon and the territory of Lebanon and the sovereignty of Lebanon as hostages and into a war that the Lebanese people didn't want. So today what we're asking is to have one army, one decision, and one authorities that take all the decision on the ground.
The major obstacle to that is, of course, Hezbollah. They are the warring party, as you said, not Lebanon. But how can the Lebanese authorities now fulfill its commitment to disarming Hezbollah when the group refuses to do so, and also when Hezbollah as a political movement still holds sway over parts of the population?
This requires a lot of will. It requires a lot of courage, and it requires a decision from the head of the state in order to impose their authority and their presence. Today, the state is nearly unpresent. It declared we are a country with a flag, but without a state. And today, what we want effectively is that this state be present, be effective, and have the authority to take all the decisions. We know that this will not take, it will not happen overnight. This will happen on a long path, but we need to start it, and the state needs to approve, and the state needs to be existent. Okay. That's what we're asking today from the government of Lebanon.
Okay, Nadim Gemayel, thank you so much for your time and for joining us on Europe Today this morning. Now, as Europe grapples with another energy crisis in the wake of the Iran war, major questions are being asked about the future direction of the European Union. Our correspondent, Stefan Grobe, sat down with the EU's climate chief, Hoekstra, and asked him whether the EU could weather the storm.
If I look at the huge number of problems that we have on our plate that are in many ways, global by nature. Climate change, geopolitics, the ramifications of AI, and so on. These are all things that ask for more collaboration, more cooperation, more unity, and more Europe. So that, in my view, is the way forward. What it does ask from us is the tools and also the speed to deliver this at scale. And there, I think we have homework to do.
In what sense, homework?
I mean, if you look at the speed with which events are being pushed on our plate, and you think about our infrastructure in Europe, where quite often it's a bit at the member states level, it is a bit at the European level, it asks for coordination, and we're not necessarily always very quick in delivering. Occasionally we manage to make use of a crisis and we push things forward, but overall our design is too much geared for good weather. We're not in good weather. We're in exceptionally bad weather, and that will continue. So that asks for a different approach.
On that note, do you think that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin have done a lot to unify the continent here?
Well, I mean, it's and again, let's separate the two. What is crystal clear is that Putin continues with his absolutely horrific war in Ukraine, and we have a huge incentive that in the end this ends with a bloody nose for him, and he is wanted in The Hague. As for the Americans, I think I'm worried about the damage that has been done to the relationship, to the marriage, and in my view, we need to follow let's say a two-track strategy. On the one hand, there is a lot that unites us, and there is an incentive, and there are clear interests here at hand that make it important that we continue with our American friends. That's one. At the same time, it is true that the commitment displayed by the Americans themselves is not what it always was before. So we have no alternative than to grow up and do more of this stuff ourselves, to get much more savvy in the domain of geopolitics, and by the way, build broader partnerships with our partners ranging from Canada to Japan to a whole range of others.
And you can catch the full interview with Commissioner Hoekstra at 11:30 Brussels time this morning on Euronews. Moving on now, this week the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni shared an AI-fabricated image of herself in underwear that was spreading virally online, warning people against the dangers of deepfake nudes. The EU institutions in Brussels are also taking action to crack down on AI-generated sexualized images, as Jakub Janis explains.
It's no secret that AI is everywhere. And this week, Italy was in an uproar over AI-generated nude photos of Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. And in a bold move, she published the image herself on social media as a stark warning. If it can happen to a Prime Minister, it can happen to anyone. And this personal attack has fueled an urgent discussion in Brussels on how to stop nudification and protect citizens. So what's the plan? Yesterday, the EU reached a deal to ban nudification apps, so the very tools used to generate non-consensual sexually explicit photos and videos. And this is a vital step because while politicians can fight back, most victims lack the resources to defend themselves. And this ban is a part of a broader update to the AI Act, so the EU's rulebook for artificial intelligence, and was designed to simplify the original rules and make them more innovation-friendly for growing businesses. And usually EU law moves slowly, but Brussels has put this issue on a priority fast track. And the specific ban on nudification apps is expected to be fully enforceable across the Union by December this year. Alright, but what if you become a victim today? For now, you can use existing national privacy laws to insist that fake content is removed, especially after the GDPR rules. And since your image is your personal data, you have a legal right to erasure. a practical way to force platforms to hit the delete button immediately. And we know this all too well at Euronews. Our stories and journalists have been targeted by AI fakes, with voices manipulated and images stolen by coordinated disinformation campaigns, or even outlets like Russia Today. And we always report these cases, so if you happen to find a deepfake of yourself, you should not wait and report it too.
Jakub Janis there. And that's it from us for today and for this week. Thank you so much for starting your day with Europe Today. Maeve McMahon will be back in this seat here on Monday. Remember to tune in then. And in the meantime, have a great weekend.